Hello. All right. I just wanted to jump on and do a little bit of reading. Um, I guess it's Monday already, at least while while I'm doing this. And yeah, like a couple things that are kind of interesting that are going on with me. Because as I like before I sit down to do this reading, I kind of think about like what's the most topical stuff that's going on as it relates to Parinama, and also as it relates to practicing Parinama in my life. And so, right now, one of the things is that last week there was my the vet. I took my cat to the vet, and there were some issues with his liver chemistries. And so, I've been practicing Parinama method with like staying with the sadness, and also like luckily he's kind of seems to be on the other side of this, like he's eating now and stuff, but still it doesn't I'm not trying to, I think one of the key things is like not running from the fact that it's like the sadness. I can still feel it like in my chest, and for me the sense of sadness is actually like a menthol. It's like a cold burning, and it's like right here. But yeah, it's actually looking really good. The other thing is working on Parinama as like the side of bringing this into the world as a business, but more specifically, what I mean by that is expanding the reach of this. And part of that, this is also practicing. This is also like as the practice lands, and as if you have the book chapter 12, which is this period that I'm in right now, and I've given myself a decent amount of time for this discovery. But part of the process of creation is being able to stay in kind of a liminal state of uncertainty, and but like pretty radical curiosity, and also like really acute, what I call like acute curiosity of like really watching things, watching how people respond to things, watching how I feel about things. Like what really naturally arises is things that like have my interest and come easy, and what are the things that take away my clarity or make me feel bad, or take away my clarity, my energy, and make me feel bad. And so trusting that can be really hard, because right now some of the larger opportunities that are kind of low hanging fruit make me feel kind of like I don't feel like this is, because this is the right thing. And so this is to do with like larger corporate stuff, some opportunities with professional organizations, not all of them, but specifically the ones I've been talking about, and trusting that, and just trusting that, like my persistence to just keep having conversations with people, keep exploring this, and keep working on I'm working on modules about how to really teach this from a very practical standpoint. So building practical skills and is one part, and the other is actually just how to turn this into a sequential process that is teachable. So yeah, so I guess the point that maybe to make here is that is spending the time, and is figuring out what is the question I'm trying to answer. And right now I know what the question is. It's like, who is this for, and what is the component of this I'm going to focus on as an offering. So those are two things, and the offering is coming in pretty hot. And I actually I think it's worth talking about, because people ask me about this. People are finishing the book right now, and I actually might do a standalone video on this about like how to, I guess like consciously create things, is is to be able to stay in this space of not knowing with questions. And the other part that isn't covered in the book is what I just mentioned, which is really watching what is what really like feels right. And it's not even that it feels good, it's just that it's like energizing, and it's like there's like a specific feeling to it. But I think more importantly, not questioning the things where it's like, "Yeah, this really is, like, making me exhausted," like, or it's kind of like I'm feeling like I have to try too hard to explain this. So, in the context of businesses, in developing value propositions for businesses from my past, this has been a real part of one example would be, if I'm selling into real estate, be finding what segment of it and finding who really leans in, and in tech, other segments of tech, but one's examples coming to mind. And then it's looking at, so it's kind of like you kind of, it's like getting more and more clear about who really gets it. Because especially in the early days when you're launching something, there are people there right now, whatever it is that you want to do, there are people that are like, that really resonate with it. And stopping the process of finding them with somebody who is sort of interested or like willing to entertain it, means that there's a lot of like let's see, like one way to put this is that people, the kind of like early adopters, if you're talking about kind of that old school model, um, they have a higher tolerance and can bridge some of the gaps in terms of the figuring out part. And so it's looking for that resonance, and that's where you build the momentum, is from people who really get it. And you can tell there's a body language, they're filling in the gaps, they're saying like, "You know what? This really makes a lot of sense to me." They're telling their own stories as it relates to it, versus people that really like the idea of the outcome, but they might have a lot of questions. Like, well, what happens if this goes wrong? What happens if that goes wrong? And to me, I look at people like that, and I put them sort of on the roadmap of being like a little bit later in the process. So it's like I'm going to come back to them because they're going to need to see a little bit more, a little more risk averse, a little less like really leaned in, and also the amount of work to really convince people while you're also trying to bring something to life. So just some thoughts. That's what I'm working on right now, and also some really like exciting developments as far as some clarity around, a model and a methodology to apply the methodology. So that's been really exciting. Another thing I think worth mentioning in that is that when you enter into like back to the third, to the rather the 12th chapter, where you're kind of going into inquiry and then like into this liminal space of beginning to um, like visualize and see it. There's like kind of a quality of just things kind of entering into your world. And that's been happening to me again, like this magic of people will send you links to things. Like you'll see somebody recommend a book and you'll go, that book, there's something about that. It really speaks to me. I'm going to check it out. Um, just things will pop out, you'll be watching something and like a quote will come through and it'll be like the person who said the quote will be like, who said that? And I look and I'll read, it's like there's kind of there's something magical about it. I mean, the entire book, the Parinoma book that I'm about to read from right here, is basically, a textbook that is, when people say, how did you write this much, you know, about so many things? And that's the answer, is I really allowed that this it's like staying in this liminal like hyper curious state and being really receptive to any questions that I was asking, because I'd be asking a lot of questions. Like I mean, if you're reading along, there's a lot of questions that are being answered, at least by my estimation here, and they would just reveal themselves to me. But it was, yeah, yeah, I welcome any questions about this. As people are asking me in life, and folks who are in the book finishing it, or just even thinking about getting into the process about why to get into it. Ultimately, as like the arc of the book is that it is the ascension through the hubs in the self-actualization channel of starting from the very beginning and going straight through all the way to the seventh hub. But the return path is entering that state of creation, which is like begins in a void, and you begin to like little by little kind of bring it, or densify it, to bring it and make it something that's like practical and exists in the world. So yeah, so here we are. Here we are. We're at, so if you're following along in the book, this is page 68. Wow, I'm really, I think one of the things I'm noticing is I'm doing like this at the live reading. It's like 10, 11 minutes in, and we're, it takes, there's a little bit of a preamble, I guess. Um, so yeah, thanks for hanging in there for this. It's kind of helpful to be kind of talking out loud as well. And yeah, yeah, it's helpful to be talking out loud. So, okay, so I'm going to do some reading here, and yeah. And also, please, if you've been watching these, like liking and commenting, it's really encouraging to me. Just because um like it really, like, I guess the word is encouraging. And there isn't really at this point anything that is like like can feel that would ever stop me from doing this, but the sense that we're entering a conversation, that there's like, just really like hearing where I can be even further, expanding on something, maybe a little less something, maybe add in something else. The whole, like, really, like, as much as this is like a really like a pleasure for me, it's also in the it's in service. So that's like my greatest hope. My greatest hope is that anyone who needs this, wants it, could benefit from it, can have access to it. Hence reading it here on YouTube. So anyway, here we go. Let us begin. Also, I have the Parinama Method Instagram, where I'm posting stuff that's a little, I think, representative of practicing Parinama. So if you want to check that out, if you're along for it. So anyway, okay. So boundary invasions, medical practices, accidents, and illnesses. And just as a reminder, we're in the interruptions and stressors, and an important part here is like of the first hub is the physical body and its autonomy. So I will begin reading now. So prepare yourselves. Okay, so unwelcome and unwanted touch invades the physical boundary. Even infants will demonstrate a preference for how they want to be touched by fussing and squirming. If a boundary is either ignored or invaded, in the initial development of this hub, early responsiveness and affection will profoundly affect a baby's relationship with touch. Yeah, I'm going to read that again. If a boundary is either ignored or invaded in the initial development of this hub, early responsiveness and affection will profoundly affect a baby's relationship with touch, one that carries into adulthood. Yeah. Yeah, I think there's really something, I feel like that was like a rarely not super clearly written sentence. But yeah, like the foundation of comfort and, and adapting to touch, and even adapting our narrative to what the environment being responsive to us means for our own survival, to make sense of that. This is so this is saying like this goes deep. So anyhow, our nervous system has deep ancient roots, and although medical practices can be lifelines, medical care can be experienced as invasion and even trauma. Giving injections to infants can be life-saving, but the procedure is an invasion of the physical boundary. And according to Anodea Judith, time spent in incubators can leave prematurely born children with the sense that relationships are surreal because their first impressions of caring faces are seen through glass and plastic. Any events for which we must surrender control of our body, such as being anesthetized, breaks the feeling of complete governance over ourselves, even though these practices can save our lives and keep us healthy. In Waking the Tiger, Healing Trauma, Peter Levine discusses how these events disrupt our sense of safety and physical security. We have a feeling of helplessness. He writes that unless these reactions are expressed and released, they can become trapped in the body as frozen shock and stored as stress. Traumatic symptoms are not caused by the event itself. They arise when residual energy from the experience is not discharged from the body. The energy remains trapped in the nervous system where it can wreak havoc on our bodies and minds. Yeah, central to this entire enterprise. Yeah, I'm going to read that again. Peter Levine. Traumatic symptoms are not caused by the event itself. So the traumatic symptoms are not caused by the event itself. They arise from residual energy from the experience. They arise when residual energy from the experience is not discharged from the body. The energy remains trapped in the nervous system where it can wreak havoc on our bodies and minds. Some events, such as car accidents, natural disasters, illnesses, and injuries, are beyond our control. Regardless of circumstances, being trapped, shocked, or restrained can lead to long-term stress in the body if the tension is not discharged. Yeah, there's a lot of there's kind of a lot of really like anecdotal and probably there's a lot of really interesting stuff about this. One of the one example was there was the bus hijacking in the 70s, and it's like the name of the town. The thing that's stuck in my head is Chupacabra. It's not the name, but there was a I think it was in California in the 70s. An entire bus of children was I guess like hijacked by two men and driven into like a cave of some sort, or like some like hidden dwelling. Not even dwelling, like a cave or some kind of. And there was one kid who actually like dug out of the cave and like I believe like went and got help. And and this and like in the down the road after the children had been rescued, and this was before there was really a lot of processing, or if any, and even like post-traumatic counseling and stuff. The one kid that was like seemed like pretty unaffected was the one who'd actually dug himself to safety. And so when that example is used by folks that are talking about like having like really intense experiences like stuck in our bodies, it's like this immobilization in the moment, and then like you're saved, but it's like all the stress is stored in you. So conceivably the child who had dug himself out, or the person who was like had actually been able to like move that out of their body. So I mean, there's an example there that had really like kind of left an impression on me when I was researching the book. So and I'll read the last passage before we move on to adaptations and holding patterns. So okay, so last but not least, and certainly not entirely inclusive, and I mean, to look back here, it's the interruptions and stressors that we cover here. It's absence and loss, and that's just stability, nourishment and nurture, boundary invasions, and instability and insecurity in work. Yeah, and I think one of the things too with interruptions and stressors here is that I chose to write not necessarily about interruptions and stressors as their this one's a little trickier as it's like what happens when you're a kid. I was kind of avoided that as I'm not like a psychologist. I actually wrote more about how like yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to extend on that. It's just like there's like this is just more about yeah, I don't know. I actually think I'm just gonna like cut that. Let's just stop talking on this, and I'm gonna read this. But yeah, but instability and insecurity at work. One of the reasons that I included this is that, or felt it was really important to add in, is that livelihood and not necessarily like wealth creation and attainment of aspirations. I'm talking about how our livelihood supports our ability to to pay for housing, food, to pay to like pay for our needs to be met and that connection. And one thing actually that just kind of popped into my head here is like that connection. Oftentimes, when people are afraid of losing their jobs, there's like more of a fixation on that part of the loss, but there's also like loss um, that extend into all hubs, including belonging and connection and purpose and power. And but the thing is, the one that gets a lot of airtime for practical reasons, but also yeah, practical reasons, and is this. So anyway, here we go. So instability and insecurity at work. Income insecurity and the destabilizing fear of not meeting your basic needs can be devastating to the sense of solidity in this hub. Feeling unsafe at work can also be extraordinarily destabilizing to our general sense of safety. If your boss is critical and threatening, his predictably terrible behavior affects your health, quality of life, stress levels, and relationships. When we feel secure, we perform better. Without physical security, we behave out of fear and become more likely to steal, to protect our interests at the expense of others, and in some cases, to act more emotional and get labeled as disruptive. This insecurity and its resulting behavior are seen at all levels of an organization, including in the executive suite. Yep. Paul Santagata, Google's head of industry, telecom, and consumer electronics, studied workplace performance, and his findings reveal that the most significant predictor of a team's performance is the sense of psychological safety within the group. Teams in which members feel safe to take risks and trust in fairness outperform those with cutthroat environments. When individuals feel unsafe, they will shift into protection mode and do what they need to save themselves. Self protection, risk avoidance, and defensiveness will include behaviors that are bad for the long term health of a company, such as taking credit for others' work, plagiarism, blaming colleagues, creating confusion, and withholding information that could help others. Further creating anxiety for teams is the lack of a plan and or the occurrence of constant change. One way to make employees feel unsafe is to constantly be changing direction and goals. We tend to intuit continuous shifts in strategy and direction within an organization as a lack of strong leadership, because it usually is, if not always. Well, most of the time. For some leaders, there can be a false attribution to chaotic conditions producing their best work. They overlook the level of power and visibility they have in times of turbulence, not considering that it isn't a driver that gets car sick. Hey, that's a good one. After all, who can function well in a state of constant unstructured change, especially if they are not at the wheel? Wow, this one's pretty loaded. This goes back to like the thing about like how it's hard to read this book quickly. Reading this, I'm like, there's a few really like key things that stand out to me. And one of them is when people feel unsafe at work, how they naturally move to fear and fear-based behaviors, which are have kind of this like hyper primal individualistic state of looking out for, like, it's really like deep in first hub stuff of trying of just like the need to survive, to physically survive. And it kind of creates these, kind of Game of Thrones types of environments. And so some of the stuff I've seen with this is like, for example, on a team where maybe some benefit is cut, and it's like, or some part of compensation is reduced. And what will happen is that the team will start doing stuff where it's like gray areas about what I'll call stealing. So gray areas in expense reports, gray areas in recording mileage. Just being like, there's just something that happens when, like sometimes like really small cuts are taken. But what they do is they undermine the sense that a lot of people have about being safe. So people start trying to like fortify and squirrel stuff away. Um, and the other thing is change, constant change. Creates a lot of anxiety, and it's something that even as a leader, I was just working with an organization and talking about this, where it's like, it's really, this was a really good analogy, actually. I should have used that, which is that, it isn't the driver that gets car sick. So, God, that's really good. I wish I'd had that top of mind. It really is that, the constant changing and like moving around and switching directions, because it's like not allowing a plan to take root, because change disrupts things, and it does cause an interruption in the progress of even a bad old plan that isn't working that well anymore. Usually have like a little dip. So while that dip's happening, it can cause insecurity. And that insecurity can cause to like making another change and another change. And then you have that car sick kind of thing. Um, so yeah, so there's, yeah, I mean, look, this is like a topic that I have definitely a lot to say on. Um, yeah. But it only made a tiny little place in the book. Look at that. It just got a little, 2/3 of a page, or maybe, there it is. So anyway, thank you for coming along for the ride again. Mira, if I don't shout you out, I'm remiss for it. Thank you. I love you so much, and I'm so grateful. I'm just really grateful to have you here, and I'm really looking forward to this becoming more of a conversation, to having more of the practice integrated. I'm going to actually start making some more standalone videos on some topics that are coming up. So now that I have the time and bandwidth to invest in that, and hopefully figure out how to do some editing to make them like a little swanky. But anyhow, thank you again. I love you so much. And if there's anything that you would like to see, or any comments or anything, yeah, just reach out, just comment. Please like, it makes me feel really nice to see people like it. But just watching it is really exciting for me. Anybody watching any of this is really exciting for me. But yeah, sending you lots of love wherever you are, whatever time it is, and I can't wait to see you next time. All right, bye.